Today's guest is someone who truly understands what it takes to build organizations that are not just successful, but aligned, focused, and resilient. Joining us is Julie Reid, a professional EOS implementer who helps leadership teams cut through the noise and get crystal clear on what matters most. Julie spent 5 years with EOS Worldwide, where she led complex initiatives and played a key role in scaling their software product to $1.5 million launch in its very first year. That kind of experience gives her a rare perspective on EOS from the inside out. Before that, Julie was a product founder and operations leader herself, so she's not just teaching theory, she's lived the realities of building and leading teams. What people appreciate most about Julie is her ability to bring a steady presence into high-stakes conversations, helping leadership teams surface what really matters, make better decisions faster, and move forward together. I'm excited for this conversation today because we're going to explore how leaders can create clarity, alignment, and momentum inside their organization. Julie, welcome to the show. How are you doing today, my friend?
Thanks, Nathan. I appreciate you having me here. I'm doing well. How are you?
You bet. I'm so excited to get into this conversation today because I know the things we're going to talk about impact small business owners so much and, their chances of success in a challenging environment, right? So I'm really excited about what you're going to share with the viewers today. Let's start here, Julie. Many small business owners, they feel like they are constantly putting out fires.
Yeah.
From your perspective, working inside EOS Worldwide, what is the first shift that leadership teams and businesses need to make to move from chaos to clarity?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nathan. And honestly, one of the first things that leadership teams need to know is that they're in that chaos and that there is another way to run a business. I'm really driven by why I do what I do. And everything that I do is driven by the belief that all of the rules that we have are made up. And I think one of the things that business owners think is that in order to have a business, you have to be struggling or in chaos, not seeing your family, not making as much money as you want. And that's simply not true. And so really that leadership team and that business owner needs to realize there is a different path forward and they have to decide that they want to change. And once they do that, they have to commit to the change and actually take action on moving the business forward in a different direction, in the same direction, but in a different way.
Yeah. So when you work with organizations, where do you find that small business owners really commit to making the change? Is it when, the cost of not changing ends up being greater than the pain they experience from not changing, if that makes sense?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons people bring in something like EOS. And one thing is that they're not making as much profit as they think that they should be. They feel like there's a lack of control in the business. They're having people issues. They feel like they have tried everything and nothing works. And really the sentiment of what got you here can't get you there is so true. And so they're feeling one of those great frustrations. And that is really a catalyst for committing to that change or bringing in that change.
One of the things that I like about EOS is just the leadership focus.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the promises of EOS is alignment across the leadership team.
Yes.
So what are some of the most common misalignments that you see when you first walk into a company for the first time?
Yeah, I would say one of the most common misalignments is everybody thinking that they're all on the same page and they're actually not. Or the other major thing is a lot of companies deal with people issues. People issues account for like 82% of the issues in an organization. You maybe have the wrong person. They are not sharing in your core values, but they're in the right seat. So they're doing a really amazing job. And within EOS, we really help to sift through those people issues and make sure that people throughout the organization are accountable. And I think that is another huge issue that we see, that there isn't a true and safe accountability across the organization. People aren't doing what they say. Sometimes it comes because one person thinks that the other person should be doing something, and that other person doesn't know that they're thinking that. And so we get really clear on accountability and alignment across the leadership team first and then throughout the organization. And not only do we deal with all those people issues first, but as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of vision issues within an organization as to the owner of the company has one vision, and that owner feels like everybody has that same vision. And in fact, that's not always the case. And so we do a lot of work in the beginning to get that whole leadership team aligned around one vision and an agreed shared vision moving forward as a unit for the rest of the organization.
And from your experience, when you start working with many small businesses, do you find that a lot of them haven't done that hard work of really identifying, what their vision is or what their core values are, those kinds of things? So, and if they haven't done that work, I mean, it's that much harder to bring individuals into your organization who are in alignment with what your beliefs and values are. Do you find that in many organizations?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with having a small business is that people don't tend to take time out of the business to work on the business. And so there will tend to be these like fits and starts where one of the leaders reads a book and maybe it's around core values. Jim Collins wrote the book Built to Last, and so many people have read it and they decided that these are our core values. They put them on the wall and that's where they stayed. And within EOS, the structure is already built for you. So you don't have to think about building the business operating system as you are implementing it. And so it takes away the lack of momentum that teams tend to have when they're trying to piecemeal together all of these parts of an operating system and does it for you.
Yeah, that resonates with me so much. Just a number of organizations that I've worked with, both inside the organization and externally as a consultant. Just that idea of, our values and our mission statement are on a shiny plaque on the wall, right? But outside of that, we don't do anything with them on a daily basis. And I think that what you speak to is there's just so much truth in the fact that they're just in the grind every single day, that they don't give themselves the time to think about those things that are so important to their business and how they're perceived in the marketplace.
Right. I mean, especially with something like core values that really builds the culture of your
Sure.
organization. We say that you hire, fire, reward, and recognize based on your core values. And the tools that we have help you bake that into your everyday life within EOS. You really are able to effectively communicate and assess your team members as to whether or not they're living up to their core values and where they may need a little bit of extra support. And then it helps drive the culture of your business. So it's not just lip service. And this is just one example, right? Within EOS, but the core values are really the through line of building that culture of your business so that you're attracting the right people and honestly also repelling the people that don't fit your culture.
Yeah, and speaking about culture and just employee engagement and accountability, that leads into my next question. Many small businesses often struggle with keeping their team members accountable. A lot of them don't even have HR departments, right? And some of them may be relying on HR managers in a fractional capacity. Some of them may not even be doing that, right? So how does EOS help teams and businesses create real ownership without it feeling kind of forced or top down?
Yeah, I always pull and look to our tool called the accountability chart where we build it out. And honestly, the leadership team builds out the leadership team first, and then each function within the leadership team builds out the rest of the accountability chart for their function. And one of the really powerful things is that we talk about accountability versus organization. And so the purpose of the accountability chart is to get everybody across the company crystal clear on who is accountable for what and who you need to go to in order to solve an issue within that space or to manage that part of the business. And so one of the when we talk about being top down, I think it gets a really negative connotation versus the accountability chart really shows how everybody is holding each other accountable to their own seats.
Yeah. So When leadership teams, start implementing EOS,
Mm-hmm.
what tends to change first? Because we're talking about a lot here. We're talking about alignment, we're talking about execution capacity, all those types of things. So what typically changes first? Is it the way that they communicate? Is it the way they make decisions, or the way they prioritize, or is it kind of all of those things rolled up into one system and process?
Yeah, we have an all at once mindset within EOS. It is a very structured process that we take teams through, but we're always we have a model. It's called the EOS model, and it has 6 key components. And we're really trying to strengthen all 6 of those key components at one time so one doesn't fall behind. And so, one of the really powerful things about EOS is that we having a facilitator helping with communication and teaching the tools and the decision, not making the decisions, but helping to facilitate teams to a decision is really one of the powerful things. And when we first start implementing EOS, the first day, you're building out your accountability chart. You are taking rocks, and rocks are simply 90-day priorities. What are the most important things for the company to do in the next 90 days? You are understanding a meeting pulse. And this kind of ties into your last question around accountability. The level 10 meeting really helps teams surface and solve issues quickly and keeps them accountable within themselves. Every week you're meeting and you're checking in on the numbers in your business. You're checking in on your rocks or your quarterly priorities, those rocks on track every single week. You are holding each other accountable to what you said you were going to do coming out of the last meeting, and then you're solving issues. And so getting teams to build out their meeting pulse, the correct meeting pulse for their team, is essential in order to start moving that business forward. And so I think, and then lastly, we also build out an initial pass on the scorecard. So looking at the data that runs your business. And so what I would say that what changes first is actually the traction in your business, making progress on the most important things, making sure that you're solving issues week to week, and making sure that you're starting to look at the numbers in your business. So you're making decisions based on facts and figures instead of subjective ego and emotion.
You keep bringing up the accountability chart. What are some of the things that they are monitoring or looking at on the accountability chart? Is that something they look at weekly, monthly, quarterly? What does that look like?
I'll probably talk about the accountability chart because it's one of my favorite tools. I also think it's one of the most powerful tools. It really
Sure.
clears up alignment within the company.
Right.
The accountability chart is an evolving document.
Okay.
And when we first create the accountability chart, there are some assumptions that we make about great entrepreneurial companies. And the first is that there's really 3 functions within any business. You have a sales and marketing function. You have an operations function that's building the product, providing the service, maybe both. And you have a finance function, which is tracking money in and out of the organization. And then that makes up your leadership team. And then there's a seat that sits atop that leadership team called the integrator. And that integrator harmoniously integrates that entire leadership team as they're working towards that vision. They're the heartbeat of the organization. They hold people accountable. And so when we look at the accountability chart, it brings all of that structure and clarity, and we customize it, of course, to the business itself, but it brings that structure and clarity, and we're looking at what does this business need to succeed? What kind of structure does this business need to succeed if we're looking 6 to 12 months in the future? And so you really take all of the people out of it. We kind of jokingly say we're going to fire everybody in the room to build this accountability chart and the structure so that you can take your ego out of it and really make the right choices for the organization. We put people back in later, but it really takes all of that out of it so that you are looking at how we're going to move this business forward. And then once you have that structure, it changes pretty Pretty frequently. And it is an evolving document. And so you're always thinking, what do we have to do in terms of the structure in order to take this business further down the line? And there's a little bit more to it, right? Like you choose the roles for the seat so that crystallizes what that seat is responsible for. Everybody in the organization has what we have a phrase called everybody has a number. Everybody is accountable for achieving a certain number week to week to make sure that the organization is on track to meet the monthly, quarterly, annual goals. All of those numbers that are on the accountability chart roll up to a high level scorecard on the leadership team that gives that leadership team an absolute pulse on the business. So it's such a powerful tool combined with the tool called the scorecard and the measurables. And one of the reasons that I really love it.
Yeah, well, I'm just kind of imagining myself right now, sitting in a room with other team members, inside of a small business, and you're there facilitating. And if I'm in an organization that is a small business that I feel has been struggling, to me, it seems like your process would just feel fresh, right? And it would bring so much clarity to what we were doing. I think that would be really exciting for team members and business owners alike that are just looking for that next step for their business.
Yeah, I think so. It really is. I mean, it's a proven system. It's been around for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Gino Wickman, the creator of EOS, he wrote the book Traction.
Yep.
He worked with hundreds of companies over 5 years to test out what is now known as EOS. And so it is really a proven system, and they're simple tools. They're things that have been around for 100 years. They're going to be around for 1,000 more. There's no magic pill or silver bullet, but it has been proven and tested and over the course of 20 years with around 30,000 companies having over 300,000 session days. So it's established, and it can feel like this breath of fresh air. One of the things that I think people experience when they first hear about EOS is, oh my gosh, this is such a big time commitment. My answer to that is yes, you have to take a step back out of the business in order to free up time once you're back in the business. People tend to find that they have more time once they've implemented EOS into the organization.
Yeah, I was just thinking that they're going to be more efficient on the back end as a result of going through the process.
Right.
So for a business owner that's watching this today and they're feeling stuck or plateaued, what are the early signs that it might be time for them to bring in somebody like yourself to implement EOS?
There's really 5 things to look out for. One is that feeling of like, oh my gosh, this business is taking over my life. But that can come out in many different ways or many different reasons. And the first one is they feel like they have lack of control over their time or schedule. They maybe have lack of profitability, so they want more money. They're having those people problems like we talked about. They are hitting the ceiling in some capacity. It's the fact that what used to work is no longer working, right? We talked about that earlier. And then also they've tried a lot of stuff and nothing is working. So their business what they're doing feels ineffective or disjointed. And so they're usually feeling one or more of those 5 frustrations in their business.
Julie, we've got about 3 or 4 minutes left in our episode today. I would like to give you the opportunity to just tell more about yourself and where can people learn about how to get involved with your process and what does that look like for them?
Yeah. So about me, I owned my own business for 7 years before I decided to go work with other small business owners in a fractional COO capacity. And in one of those businesses, I was working with my friend, which maybe sometimes recommend, sometimes don't recommend, and things weren't going well. And another friend of ours introduced EOS. My friend was always at 30,000 feet. She was having so many ideas and I was trying to implement them, and we were really butting heads. And by bringing in EOS, we were finally able to launch her product and move her business forward. It brought such accountability to all of the ideas that she said. And so I was hooked. And I worked in a few other small businesses before seeking out a job at EOS Worldwide. And like you said, I was there for 5 years and really fell in love with how running an organization on EOS, on what it's like to be a part of an organization running on EOS, that I decided to become an implementer after that experience. And so people can find me. I am available on LinkedIn and my website. Nathan, I imagine that you will link to that in the chat. I would love to chat with you about EOS and about how your organization is going.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julie. I'll make sure I put your website in the show notes, and just want to thank you for sharing your insight and your real world perspective today. From working with leadership teams through EOS Worldwide and beyond, I love how practical your approach is, and that it's not just theory, it's really the kind of work that actually helps businesses move forward and grow. And for everyone who's listening or watching today, if you're leading a team right now and things feel a little messy, a little unclear, or maybe you're just ready for that next level, this conversation was definitely for you today. Reach out to Julie. I know that she can help you. Julie, thanks again for being here on Lean Empowered TV. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Nathan. Really
You
appreciate
bet.
it.
Thank
Okay.
you. Bye-bye.